Books. Books. Books.
Hey everyone, this is Didn't Read It, the podcast that stands or falls free in its own arbitrament.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Starting off with an SAT word.
Yes, I had to Google it. But as you can assume, it's sort of got a legal-ish. You can kind of understand what it means based off of if you know legal terms.
Rolling in here with your fancy lawyer talk.
We're going to get into the fact that Milton introduced so many words into the English language, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm Kayleigh Hughes, and I'm a writer and editor.
I'm Grace Todd, and I'm very excited for today.
Why are you excited, Grace?
Because you're going to tell me about some God and Jesus which I love, but also I don't know anything about this particular iteration of it.
Yes, to quote what I assume is a Bible quote, but don't actually know, because as you'll find out, we are both people who were raised without any Bible knowledge. This will be the blind leading the blind? Is that from the Bible?
I think it might be. Also, that's not technically true on my front. My grandfather was a reverend. I am decently well-versed in Bible stuff very broadly.
Okay, well, that may actually be helpful, because I myself am not. And the topic of today, the text we are discussing, is John Milton's classic epic poem, Paradise Lost, which I've read now twice, cover to cover, and also took freshman year of college a full semester class on John Milton and his entire works.
His oeuvre.
His oeuvre.
That there oeuvre.
That over there.
Oeuvre there. Oeuvre there. We are writing our words. Oeuvre there. Okay.
When I first enrolled in this class, I walked up to the professor after the first day and was like, is it okay that I've never read the Bible and I don't know anything about the Bible? Will I still be able to, succeed in this Milton class? He was like, you should get a Bible.
Wow.
And I didn't.
I mean, in fairness, though, I feel like the society we live in is so soaked in Christian iconography and mythology. There's no avoiding a lot of it. Most people know a lot of Bible stories, whether or not they were raised Christian.
Yes, and as we will come to find out, that has a lot to do with Paradise Lost, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, for realsies.
Plot twist.
It's very cool how much of an influence this poem has had on the world and on people's perceptions of what's actually in the Bible versus what's not. So, yeah, so my mom says that we're Catholic. She baptized us just in case. And she really believes in Catholicism, but...
Wait, she had you baptized, surely. It would be very funny if she insisted you were Catholic and also went rogue and was like, I am endowed with the power to baptize these children.
No, definitely not. She's one of those Catholics that's like, yeah, it's great. You can do whatever you want, and then you say sorry after. That's Catholicism.
That's definitely how that works.
I think so. So we never went to church or anything. My dad was raised with parents who were in some Baptist-y Appalachian, Southern Ohio religion, but they fully never took us to church ever. I went with my grandparents on my dad's side a couple times. One time, my mom's mom took me to Catholic church, and I did the cross thing with my left hand because I'm left-handed.
And they did not like that.
No, she was so embarrassed.
Yeah, no, that's not good.
No.
That's left is the evil hand.
Exactly.
That's why they used to beat children for trying to write left-handed. It's the sinister hand.
So a bunch of my primary Christian knowledge comes from Paradise Lost.
All right.
Grace, what do you know about Paradise Lost? What do you know that it is? What do you know about John Milton, etc.?
Very little, actually. I missed it entirely somehow. Writ large, like I said, I know it's some God and Jesus stuff. I know it is about Lucifer or Satan, which, depending on what you're reading, are sometimes different figures and are sometimes the same figure. I don't know about in Milton, but like in a general sense.
We'll totally talk about that.
I know that it's broadly pretty sympathetic to the fallen.
Okay.
And that's about it. Yeah, that's about it.
All right.
And it's written in verse, isn't it?
Sure is. It's a poem.
Oh, that's why I haven't read it. I want to be clear. I have nothing against poetry. I think it's wonderful. I think there should be more of it. But I, for whatever reason, have a very hard time sitting down for long periods of time and reading verse.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't know why.
Fantastic. You're going to learn so many things. And I think you're going to like a lot of the things you're learning. Not necessarily agree with all of them, but you in particular, as somebody of the interest that you have, you're going to like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. That is correct. That is about religion, about the story of the Bible. It basically is Milton cliffs noting, fan fictioning the whole Bible. Truly, someone on Quora, of all places, summarized it as fan fiction of the Bible.
You said the whole Bible?
Kinda.
Wow.
But he, like, accordions some shit. So, like, some stuff is extremely drawn out and expanded, and some stuff is, like, super squashed.
Wait, Old or New Testament?
Both.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a lot of material to cover.
There are 12 books.
Good God. This is so much larger than I thought it was.
Almost 11,000 lines.
Oh, honey.
In my text, which is the one I got in college, it's almost 300 pages, I think. But half of that is taken up with footnotes. Because Milton, born in 1608, was such an academic. He was so educated. He knew so many languages. He could write poetry in English, Greek, Latin, and Italian. He could write prose, additionally, in Dutch, German, French, and Spanish.
Okay, brag.
I know. And he could also read in all of those, plus Hebrew, Aramaic, and Syriac.
That's just rude.
It's so many languages.
You should only get to be good at half that many languages. I am out here gatekeeping multilingualism because I'm an uncultured American swine.
He knew so many things. Like, Sufjan Stevens is the Milton of our time.
What?
You don't know anything about Sufjan Stevens?
No.
As a musician, he makes like 100 zillion mythological and religious references in all of his music.
No, I mean, I know he's a musician. That's a bold claim, I feel like.
People are known for, like, doing pages and pages and pages of footnotes on every one of his songs. Anyway, he was born in 1608, published this in 1667. Grace, based on your knowledge of England and history, what stuff happened?
Yeah, I was just trying to think of what monarch that would have been. That's what?
A very important one. We're in the English Civil War, baby!
Oh my God. Yeah, okay.
He is a Puritan and a Republican who supports the beheading of King Charles I.
Okay, yeah, all right, we're in the Charleses. Mm-hmm. I will never not find it funny that the current Charles decided to remain Charles because we haven't had a great run of Charleses.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating.
This is a time period when it's very easy to wind up murdered either extrajudicially or by the state for being the wrong kind of Christian, not Christian enough, too Christian. It is a time period when everyone is trying to out-purity each other, much like the French Revolution.
Yes.
Was going to be later, where it's not just everyone needs to be on the same page ideologically. It's a never-ending series of purity tests that can abruptly end in your death at any time, which sounds like a phenomenal time to be writing seminal pieces of, shall we say, vaguely blasphemous literature.
Yeah, so the claim that it is vaguely blasphemous is one of the more complex things that contemporarily we sort of assume about Paradise Lost, but it is and it isn't.
Anything can be blasphemous depending on where you are looking at it from.
Exactly. And Milton threads this needle very successfully throughout this epic in the language that he chooses to depict certain things. So we'll get into the book, which, again, published in 1667, which is after the Republic has collapsed. He's imprisoned in the Tower of London for a while.
Oh, not a great place to be.
No, a bunch of his contemporaries and pals are executed. He's not. And he also survives the plague times and everything.
Sure.
He has gone blind by this point, so the entirety of Paradise Lost is dictated to his daughter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How old is he?
By 1667, he's 59.
Okay. Man, what a weird time to be alive. This is the same period of time where, like, they banned Christmas in the early American colonies because, you know, Christmas is idolatrous.
Oh, that's so wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to all of the things that he's woven into this story.
No, wait, sorry. One last question. Did you say he was for or against the king's head getting cut off?
Super for.
Okay. And then...
And he loved Cromwell.
Cromwell was such a tit. But that's another podcast. Okay, so he was super pro, shall we say, abrupt foreshortening of Charles. And...
Literally, metaphorically.
And then with Cromwell's fall, he found himself a political prisoner for a bit.
Yeah, because he remained a Republican even after Cromwell's whole thing kind of started collapsing.
Good for him.
Yeah.
We love consistency.
Yeah, he was very consistent about that. He was very consistent in pretty much everything, actually. Not a wishy-washy guy. So we've got this 12-book epic, and we mean it in the classical Greek sense. This is an epic, and that means a few things. It means we've got a hero, and it means it's written in verse. He wrote it in blank verse.
Okay.
Not rhyme.
Right.
Everything was in rhyme at that time.
They love to rhyme.
He has a defense of this. It's from the printer before the book starts, calling rhyme the invention of a barbarous age to set off wretched matter and lame meter. And he says that his rhymeless verse may seem a defect at first to vulgar readers.
I've seen this before and I love it so much. He's like, rhyming is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. And if you think that things should rhyme, you are also a moron.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You want me to not be like Virgil? You want me to not write things like Homer? You want me to not be like the Italians? You want me to just write trash? No, I'm not gonna.
Rhyming is nice.
Shut your damn mouth.
If there's one thing I love, and it's, I think, one of the reasons that we have this here podcast project going, is like people who are wildly passionate about something that is ultimately not just kind of obscure, but a matter of taste at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And just falling very strongly on like, no, it is trash and you're trash for liking it.
So it is in iambic pentameter, which Milton tweaks and adjusts and uses and abuses intentionally in various ways. So those of you who know how Shakespeare works will be able to understand the lilt, the iamb, but it's not rhyming. And if you say that shit around Milton, he's not a very violent person. He would definitely say some really rude stuff back to you.
He will pen a scathing missive.
Oh my god, he totally would.
And you'll get it in the mail and you'll be sad.
Yeah, because he was just as good at prose as he was at poetry.
Yeah.
There are 12 books because he wanted it to be an epic. He initially wrote it as 10 books and then kind of restructured the text so that it was 12. It's the same words, he just sort of broke it up differently.
So I'm realizing that I did not know the definition of an epic, so it has to be in verse and it has to be 12 parts?
According to him?
Okay, this is maybe a personal preference that we are codifying as a requirement.
I mean, the most contemporary definition is literally just like a long narrative poem about a hero type.
Epic verse, bruh!
So my summaries and my little notes are so short to try and make this tolerable because 12's a lot of books.
12 is a lot of books.
8 is a lot of legs, Dave.
I believe in you. Let's go. Tell me a story.
The way Milton structures it is, he's got in prose a summary of each book and then the verse. Books 1 and 2 basically are all about Satan.
A wonderful place to kick off.
It really is. And you said that you had a hard time getting into Paradise Lost the one time you tried to read it.
I just have a hard time with verse in a general sense.
Yeah, totally fair. And I think this is partly because just a little before he actually starts the story part where we're meeting with Satan as he and all of his demons, his fallen angels, are like writhing in the fiery, molten pits of hell. Just a little before that is Milton himself invoking muses and telling us that he's going to tell us a story.
You gotta love the throat clearing.
Yeah.
I will say, if there's one nice thing about contemporary literature, it's that we've pretty unilaterally been like, okay, you have to stop. You have to stop with the throat clearing. It's taking too long.
We meet Satan and all of his fallen angels after they have been kicked out of heaven. They're described in great detail, suffering and chained and trapped in this horrible, sulfurous, roiling, miserable hell.
Kinky.
Yeah, it's really beautifully wrought. We get to see Satan speak.
Ooh.
He's got rhetorical skills.
You'd have to be if you're going to talk a bunch of people into forsaking heaven with you.
Yes.
Well, angels, I suppose.
And let's not forget that Satan himself is sort of an angel. Milton is kind of one of, and definitely the most significant writer to fuse all of these identities into one single character who has shared qualities, who is one being. He sort of creates this devil Satan that in actual biblical text isn't a physical being, really.
Right. And you said it's Lucifer, Satan, and what's the third?
The devil.
The devil.
And according to translations, Satan comes from the Hebrew, the devil comes from the Greek, Lucifer from the Latin.
Okay. But they're all portrayed slightly differently in different places and things, right? Isn't that the thing?
This concept of evil and temptation and the accuser is translated in different ways from the original text, depending on the language. So from this Quail Bible collection, which is actually quite useful, from Claremont Graduate University, there's this explanation of, in the Old Testament, the Hebrew word Satan occurs over 27 times, but it's mostly translated to mean accuser or obstruction. It's not really translated to this evil man with horns and like...
Right, it's not literally a weird little guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And Milton has been like, no. It's a weird little guy. And a charismatic one at that. I like it.
In the book of Job, they give him an article, the Satan.
Oh.
Which makes it sound like he has like a job title in heaven. Meanwhile, when the New Testament was written in Greek, Satan got translated to diabolos, or like devil, which can also mean accuser or to throw. And then Latin is Lucifer, which is the bringer of light.
Yeah.
So these are all just mashed all together. Milton uses all three words and a whole bunch of others, such as the accuser and the fiend, to refer to this character, Satan, who he fully builds out as a literary figure.
Love it.
Yeah.
10-10.
This is now a story. This is now a narrative. And so far, Satan's our man.
Yeah, I was going to say, and let's go meet him.
Yeah. He rouses all of his fallen angel demon friends and convinces them all to fight back after they've all fallen from heaven. He's the original speaker of the two phrases, which I don't know if you're familiar with. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven.
Oh, I have heard that. Yeah.
People think that one and this following one, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven.
Oh, yeah. That one has had a whole life of its own.
Neither of those are in the actual Bible. They are in Paradise Lost. They are not in the Bible.
Yeah, of course not. That's not... I have read the Bible, not entirely, but like...
I sure haven't.
You don't get that kind of rhetorical flourish in the Bible, I promise you. It's not that cute, narratively.
So Satan gives this incredibly rousing speech. We're gonna make hell, this great place. I'm gonna be king of it, and like it's better to be ruling here than to be subservient up there. He gathers everyone. One of the great things is he gathers all of the different pagan gods and idols of every other religion.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there's pages of just Milton going on and describing, because he's a human encyclopedia, every other thing of worship in every other culture.
I like that they're literally real.
Yeah.
But also in hell.
Yeah.
Theologically, I'm seeing some holes here.
Satan convinces all of his fallen angels and everything. They crawl out of their chains and everything. They get a little more, they get their wits about them. In hell, they build Pandemonium, which is, are you familiar with this?
Sort of.
Pandemonium, the direct translation, which I thought I had memorized and then didn't.
I hate to admit it, but I think the reason it rings the bell is because of that kind of terrible Sabrina the Teenage Witch show.
That's a great show.
The reboot.
You shut your mouth. Pandemonium, which means all of the demons. Pandemonium.
Oh, it's always funny when you pin down the etymology of a word and you're like, oh, that has been slapping me in the face this whole time.
Yeah. So Milton invents this word, and
it's a good one.
It's great. And Satan invents Pandemonium, essentially. They build this giant kingdom in hell that is like a twisted mirror of God's kingdom in heaven.
Sounds great.
Yeah, Satan wants to like have the same orders of his demons that God has as like the orders of his angels. He wants to be the god of hell. It's cute. They have a meeting where they work out, like, what do we do next? Now that we've been kicked out, now that we have this great kingdom in hell, they have the speaking roles of the demons. You know, your Moloch, your Beelzebub, your Belial, I think. They all argue about, should we go and have another battle with God? Should we be sneaky? Should we stay and do nothing? And they all have these like long rhetorical arguments. Paradise Lost is full of long debates that are full of moral quandaries and characters reflecting on ethics.
Yeah,
It's pretty cool. And they land on Satan's gonna creep out and spy on this new thing that God created called Earth and see if he can do something sneaky on Earth to screw over God.
Sure. All right. Yeah. This is giving like big revolutionaries vibes.
Yeah.
They've established a kingdom. They're like, all right, you know, do we go head to head? Do we engage in like guerrilla warfare? It's like, all right, we're gonna do some stochastic terrorism in God's new creation.
And what wacky timing in political history. How coincidental.
Can't imagine where the inspiration for that came from.
But Milton insisted that the actual hero of this epic is God, who comes into play in book 3.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm going to read you this beautiful quote from William Blake, who claims that the writing in books 1 and 2 is so gorgeous. And then we get to book 3 where we enter God's kingdom and it's God talking to his son, his right hand. And we hang out mostly in God's kingdom in book 3. And William Blake is like, that's when the writing gets way less interesting. So William Blake says, the reason Milton wrote in fetters when he wrote of angels and God, and at liberty when of devils and hell, is because he was a true poet and of the devil's party without knowing it.
Yeah, so whether or not it was intentional, he's definitely positioned Satan as the much more interesting, enigmatic, and frankly inspiring figure.
Yeah, we meet Satan first. He gets all these kick-ass speeches. He develops and shows his logic. He gets to do all this fun wordplay. We are fully in Satan's world for 2 books, and then we get to visit God, and we meet God, and we meet God's son, aka Jesus, eventually. But in this book, he's only referred to as, like, the son. They chat, and God is basically like, I know everything that's gonna happen, and I know that Satan's gonna lure my cute little creations to fall, and Milton constantly describes God's son as being, like, full of grace, and he's like, I will be the one to take on their sins and be the one to
redeem them.
That's the word.
It's fascinating to think about building out essentially a backstory to the Jesus narrative.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't get that in the Bible. It's just like, Jesus is here, and then he dies.
Yeah, totally not there.
The premeditation of it is fascinating. It gives him a level of agency that you don't find in a lot of other narratives, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and he plays a big role throughout this story. They have this chat, just the Son of God makes this choice, and the other part of book 3 is Satan making his way through what's called chaos, which is the murky everything craziness that God uses as his materials, his dark materials, if you've ever read that series, to create Earth and the universe. And Satan kind of navigates and lands on Earth. And one of the very fun things about book 3, and really throughout, is just how often Milton has to do all of this linguistic wiggling to, as you noted, depict the right kind of understanding of astronomy that wouldn't get him in trouble at the time.
You gotta love being a creative in a theocracy. It's the best. It's so good.
So one of these footnotes is Milton's non-committal description of Satan's root, sunward, accommodates competing 17th century astronomical models.
He's like, look, I have been in the Tower of London. I am not trying to do it again.
Also, this is where I want to drop my fun fact that early in his life, when he was traveling around Europe and he was in his 20s, I think, he met Galileo. How fun is that?
He was thinking of him. He was like, hey, buddy.
Yeah, and he makes a handful of allusions to Galileo throughout this book. Like Satan's, I think, shield at one point is round in the shape of the astronomer's thingy telescope.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's cute. He loves the cosmos. He talks so much about science and the cosmos and is weirdly hyper-specific about the shapes of orbs and the different planets and stuff, and is deeply fascinated by it.
That's another thing that reminds me of Marlowe's Faustus, because there was a lot more astronomy in Faustus than I had expected.
Yeah.
The very tight-knit pairing of astronomy and theology in the 16 and 1700s feels so weird compared to now.
Yeah, it does. And then you think about astronomy was to them at risk of completely dismantling everything they believed about religion.
Right.
And potentially disproving the entire concept of religion. So Milton has to fit not just Earth, but the whole universe into this map he's making of heaven and the whole universe and hell. He has to explain, which he does later, why there's other planets and all of this other stuff.
It's fine. These things are definitely compatible. It's okay.
Yeah, it's so funny. There's this run of books that I think summarize pretty quickly because they're dumb. So after Satan does some, navigation? Exploring?
He's a fallen angel about town.
Yeah. Fun fact, in book 2, when Satan is leaving hell, he encounters two of my favorite characters because they are so twisted and messed up. Sin and Death.
Oh.
Sin is Satan's daughter by way of exploding out of his head, a la Greek myth.
Cool.
And then he immediately rapes her a bunch.
Oh.
This happens at some point between
the
battle and when we meet Satan leaving hell. So I don't know exactly when it happens.
My enthusiasm about Satan as a character is waning.
Hey! He's the king of hell.
What do you want?
Then the child that Sin births is Death, and then Death rapes her a bunch, and
oh no!
So all of the little babies of Death are starving and just eat Sin's bowels over and over and over again. And so they all run into each other, and Satan's like, I'm gonna get you guys tons of stuff to do on Earth, trust me. So we just leave them for now, but they'll come back. Because I don't know if you've heard, but humans are in fact intimate with Sin and Death at this point. Contemporarily.
Yeah, 100%. I'm still kind of reeling from the mental image that you just gave me.
Yeah. It would be nice to imagine that it was consensual, but I'm pretty sure the book says rape.
Cool.
Okay, back to book 4. Satan lands on Earth. He watches Adam and Eve. We get to see Adam and Eve for the first time. When we meet Eve, and she talks about waking up in the Garden of Eden for the first time in paradise, as it's called in the book, the first vision we get is she looks into a pond and she sees her own reflection. So the first image is this allusion to Narcissus, which is...
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Woman, thy name is vanity.
Yeah, pretty much. Satan sneaks up to Eve's ear while she's sleeping and whispers that she should totally go eat the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge. Before that, Adam and Eve have super hot, super innocent marital sex.
Oh,
Yeah.
lovely.
Milton loves marital sex. And thinks there's nothing wrong with it, and is like, this is good, and it's woo, they should be definitely f***ing, and it's great.
Oh yeah, I mean there were so many different theological movements over the centuries about whether or not marital sex is just the best. And I'm pretty sure this was one of those periods that was like, yeah, once you're married, it's no holds barred. Have a great time. This is like good and important and healthy. I mean, we're not too far off from John Donne, right?
I don't know when John Donne was.
All right, anyway, carry on.
Yeah, so they have not fallen yet. They're just innocents that are supposed to spread their seed and, you know, make all of humanity and everything. They have lots of great sex. Whee!
Happy marital boning.
But Raphael, who has been warned from this other angel that, in fact, Satan is now on Earth trying to get Adam and Eve to fall, he comes down to Earth in book 5, and that's when we can kind of do a quick run of books because Raphael talks for so goddamn long. It is just him talking from books 5 through 8, in part because Adam sucks.
Shut up, Raphael. Wait, why does Adam suck?
In this particular context, it's because Raphael, the angel's original goal is just come down and warn them about Satan. Warn Adam and Eve, who are in their garden, doing their little cooking and cleaning and gardening and gazing into each other's eyes and having wise conversation. Milton's really into the idea that the two first humans are equal in being intellectual partners and having stimulating conversation and stuff.
Oh, that's nice. Except for Eve's vanity.
Yeah, oh, and they're not equal. He says a bunch of stuff about how, though both not equal as their sex not equal seemed, for contemplation he in valor formed, for softness she in sweet attractive grace. He for God only, she for God in him.
Yeah, that sounds about right for the 1600s.
Yeah, that's still the classic shit of, like, you're created for your man.
It could be worse. At least she's portrayed as being capable of carrying on an intelligent conversation.
He's halfway in between some of the worst representations of Eve and some of the kind of cooler ones, which is that she's very much a competent, equal partner, and that Adam and Eve together are in true love, and that matters.
It was actually illegal to say anything like that about a woman until about 1980.
So Raphael comes down while they're doing their thing. His job is to warn them about Satan, so he tells in detail the story of the Battle of Heaven. It's cool because Milton's really good at describing battles. Satan and his fallen angels are the ones that create cannons, and, like, Milton basically associates Lucifer with, like, all this sort of weaponry. He thinks that anything, you know, made with gunpowder is sort of satanic. I think that's kind of cool.
That tracks, too, because during his lifetime there would have been huge innovations in gunpowder-based weaponry, and I could see looking at all of that and being like, yep, that's satanic.
Like, no, all of this explosive stuff, bad.
Well, especially, I mean, if you think of satanic as literally meaning forbidden knowledge that maybe it's better you don't have, that's gunpowder in a nutshell.
Right? Basically, the reason Satan starts this rebellion to begin with is because God anoints his son the, like, special right-hand man who's above all others in heaven, and Satan is so hurt. He's, like, so betrayed that there's somebody else more important. He's supposed to be pretty much the most important angel, but then there's the son of God. No one else is a son of God. This is so unfair. We've got to serve this son of God as if he's God.
The longtime advisor or second in command being incensed to the point of rebellion after being replaced by daddy's special little boy is such a trope, like, but in real life. I'm thinking of so many different monarchies and also works of fiction that were disrupted for this very specific reason.
Satan's feelings are really hurt.
Because you know, what does Daddy's special little boy even know? He's new to this scene. He's basically a baby.
What does he have that Lucifer, bringer of light, doesn't have?
Years I've served you. Years.
So they have this cool battle, and one fun thing we learn is that only angels that turn evil and bad can feel pain. So during the battle in heaven, that's all of the good
That's a real stacked deck there.
all of the good angels, even as they're getting like plowed down by cannons, they aren't feeling suffering and pain, and all of the rebellious angels are feeling pain for the first time. But still, it's like, who's gonna win? And then God sends down his son, and God's son charges them all out of heaven. Adam is like, so because this happened, this Lucifer guy wants to come and tempt us because he wants everyone to suffer just like he is. And Raphael's like, yeah, exactly. And Adam's like, cool. Okay, now never leave. Tell us more stuff. So for books 7 and 8, Adam's like, talk about how God made Earth. And Raphael's like, okay, so on the first day, and then on the second day, and on the third day, God made blah, blah, blah. He's even like, I don't want you to leave yet, so tell us this next. And with the planet thing, Raphael's like, this is where Milton gets kind of snarky about whether religion can explain astronomy, where Raphael's like, all right, stop asking so many questions. Just worry about your own stuff.
Be cool, bud.
Yeah, God wants this and that, but also just stop asking questions.
The parent of a toddler being like, I don't know, champ. You know, I'm tired. You've asked me so many questions today.
And then literally after that, Adam's like, okay, fine, I can't ask so many questions, but I don't want you to leave, so let me tell you about when I was born.
What?
By now we're on book 8.
I'm sure that a certain amount of this is the tone of your retelling, but it really does. You're doing a great job portraying Adam as an exasperating toddler.
It's totally how it reads. Let me find a quote so I can illustrate that bit. So here, after Raphael finishes telling Adam to stop thinking about the planets, he goes, "Thee I have heard relating what was done, ere my remembrance. Now hear me relate my story, which perhaps thou hast not heard. And day is not yet spent. Till then thou seest how subtly to detain thee I devise, inviting thee to hear while I relate."
That is one of those characters and one of those sections of dialogue where you're like, this man had a neighbor that he could never escape once they started talking to each other.
But, unfortunately, the only person around to listen to Adam all the time was Eve.
Poor Eve.
And so, Raph leaves in book 8. Book 9 is the book of the fall.
Ooh.
And the way the fall happens is Adam and Eve know that there's this evil fiend trying to tempt them to eat the forbidden fruit. But Eve, the next day, when they start to do their chores, is like, why don't we split up? We can get more done this way, and we can be separate for a little while. Which I am putting my own reading on this entirely, but I think maybe Adam's a little bit annoying, and Eve wants some alone time.
It's like, and lo, the first man was created, and 15 minutes later, the first small talk headlock was brought into the world.
So they have this debate where they argue back and forth in these really long sections about Adam saying, I don't think it's a good idea for us to split up because then it'll be easier for Satan to tempt us. And Eve's like, you think that I'm more likely to be convinced to do this? And Adam lies and is like, no, I just think that Satan thinks that. Like literally in one of the footnotes, it's like Adam seems to be falsely denying that he entertained the thought that Eve was more likely to fall. Eve's like, how am I even supposed to prove that I can withstand this temptation if I'm around you and I can't face it in my own strength? There's all of this discussion about choice.
The agency of women.
Yeah. And she makes all these really cool statements. If our condition is to always be worrying about being tempted by this thing, how are we happy, actually? How is this perfection? Frail is our happiness if it can be tempted, and Eden's not actually Eden. All of these, like, really interesting challenges on the idea of what Eden really is, on what paradise and perfection really are. what free will really is, because God knows from the very beginning that not only is mankind going to fall, but that Eve's going to eat this fruit that Satan makes her eat.
Right. One of the things about Christian theology is it can very rapidly turn into like weird feedback loops of predestination, predetermination versus free will.
Yeah, and so God, throughout this book, is like, I gave them free will to choose whether or not to respond to this temptation, but also I know they're going to fall. So I don't really understand how both of those things can function at the same time.
They seem a little contradictory, but we are not theologians.
Yeah. But I do think it's sort of that Eve is the one that does it, but God knows it's Eve, but why is it Eve, you know?
Because women are bad.
Right. It's like, yeah, it's wild. So anyway, snake comes up, Satan as the snake. It's not a very elaborate scheme to convince her to eat this fruit of knowledge. He's like, I didn't have the ability to talk because I was a beast before, but then I ate the fruit of knowledge and now I can talk like a human. So if you eat the fruit of knowledge, you'll be more like a god. What is important, I think, is he kind of hints at you'll be maybe more equal to Adam, who, as these angels and God and Adam keep reminding you, is kind of above you, so maybe you might feel a little less unequal, and this fruit of knowledge will help you feel less inferior.
I mean, sounds great. Sign me up.
Right, like, some of this they did to her. I'm just saying.
How intentional do you think it is that she's being portrayed as having been backed into a metaphorical corner? Like, do you think that that is a fun contemporary reading we can pull from it? Or do you think that is a reading that was being set up intentionally for anyone who cared to find it?
This is hard, because Milton is very specific about literally every tiny detail of every word and every multiple meaning of every word. And he was by no means somebody who believed that Eve was justified, or I don't think he in any way believed Adam had anything to do with Eve's feelings. Most of this is modern sort of lenses you can put on it, but also there's a lot of larger beliefs that Milton puts throughout of, like, not sympathy.
Well, I mean, the content is there, right? Like, she has interiority. She has clear-cut motivations. She is having conversations on the page, and that's not nothing.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time and attention being devoted to her as a character who is explored on her own right.
Yeah, he's really good at having arguments on the page, so it's very balanced. He also makes it very obvious that this is, like, she's literally told the day before, there's gonna be something sneaky trying to convince you to eat a fruit from this tree, and she and Adam have, when she goes and tells Adam, like, I did this, isn't this amazing, you should do it too, she and Adam have these arguments back and forth about, like, did she do the right thing? How could she be so stupid? Like, he starts being really mean to her, she starts being really mean to him back, and voicing all of the different judgments about how she could have made this choice. It's just really even-handed.
Yeah.
It is ultimately very sexist. There is a particularly sexist speech from Adam that I don't think Milton is the voice of. Like, I think that he's giving Adam his post-fall meanest voice that's not actually how Milton views women or Eve. But all of the logic throughout this whole thing, the logic of did God do the right thing and, you know, not allowing Satan to be forgiven? Like, did God make the right choices here and there? And did Satan make the right choices? And can we understand why Satan feels this way? Like, the consideration of both sides throughout this whole book.
Yeah.
Which is maybe why it's so easy to view Satan as the hero and Eve as, like, secondary coolest person in the book, even though plot-wise they're the ones that suffer and meet their worst ends, you know?
Yeah, but that's what's so great about it. Like, that's part of what makes literature timeless, is when all of the characters are so richly rendered that you can go back and find narratives and through lines in them that would have been inherently dismissed contemporarily with when a piece of fiction was written.
Exactly.
That's why it's so important to have fiction with richly rendered characters.
And I think that's why people remember so much about Paradise Lost. And as we'll come to talk about, it's supplanted a lot of the raw translations of the Bible.
People love a narrative, man, and the Bible falls short on a lot of narrative world building, especially in some of the older...
Oh, yeah.
Some of the really old, like, Genesis stuff. There's not a lot to latch on to there.
So we'll squeeze out the last 3 books because post-fall, it's a little bit boring. But Adam agrees to eat the fruit too because he and Eve love each other so much. And he's like, I can't let you fall and me not fall.
That's nice.
And he has a really lovely little speech about, I could never survive without you, even if they made me another Eve. And I think that's really, it's very sweet and romantic.
That is nice.
Yeah. Adam bounces back and forth. He's really mean sometimes, and then there's like this ultimate wife guy moment. It's really cute.
I mean, he's the first.
Yeah, exactly. The original wife guy. So then they have really naughty, filthy, fallen sex.
Well, they're still married, though.
They are, but it's filthy, fallen sex.
Oh, okay.
And it's called play.
Oh.
Then they wake up and they're ashamed of their bodies and stuff, and they're like, oh my god, we're filthy, disgusting beings, and they're so ashamed.
And thus fetishes were born.
Exactly. And book 10, they have to confess to the Son of God, who sentences them. He very generously gives them clothes because they're so embarrassed and they've shoved fig leaves over their privates. And
that's nice.
Yeah. Then Sin and Death get to go visit Earth, and they're like, this is so great.
Oh no.
Yes, we can flourish and thrive forevermore.
This seems bad.
Satan and the demons are celebrating in hell. Satan comes back to hell, and he's like, I succeeded! I made them suffer because misery loves company, which is not a phrase that Milton invented, sadly. But basically, that's the idea.
Yeah.
But as he's giving the speech in the halls of Pandemonium, and he's expecting to hear all of this loud, raucous praise, he only hears hissing because God has turned all of his demons into snakes, and he's turned Satan into a snake, and so they're forced to suffer and be snakes forever because a snake is the body that Satan chose to beguile Eve with. He just picked a random animal, and now poor snakes are just forever.
Isn't it a thing in the Bible that snakes used to have legs and then God smote their legs away as punishment for tempting?
It wasn't, at least I didn't see in Paradise Lost any indication of legs on snake. It's possible.
I think that is there's a weird thing in the Bible where snakes are punished because Satan was one.
I mean,
that's why they crawl along the ground.
It's talked about that when Satan turns into one, he's able to sit upright in an image like how cobras can or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like he can hold most of his body up, and then after he's punished, he has to like ride the belly on the floor. But there's no mention of feet, I don't think.
The feet thing also, now that I'm saying it, sounds like a Sunday schoolization of a like very minor theological note in the way that so many things are, where having been a child in Sunday school at one point, it's a lot of, but how does this work? And then some underpaid 23-year-old being like, oh God, and just scrambling for an explanation in real time.
Yeah. So then Adam and Eve fight a lot, but books 11 and 12 are basically the condensed rest of the Bible. So God sends his son back down to Earth.
And that ends really well.
Well, hold on. No, we're not there yet. God sends Michael the angel down to Earth to tell Adam and Eve that they're banned from Eden. They're not. The son has interceded for them. I don't think they know that yet, but that they gotta leave Eden. But he takes Adam up to a hill, and he tells Adam the vision of everything else is going to happen in the Bible. And so that's where he talks about everything pre-flood, and then the final book, he continues the story post-flood, and that's when the Son of God enters into things. And then, the end of book 12, they walk out of paradise together.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, so it's romantic a little bit in a, like, doomed way at the end.
I mean, isn't that humanity?
Exactly. So many things about Paradise Lost are just you going, oh, that's so human.
Yeah.
Like, especially with Satan, you read these things and you're like, oh, that's so human of him. Oh, my God. Or, like, Eve, and you're like, oh, that's so human of her.
All right. So that's Paradise Lost.
That's it. And now you never need to read the Bible. But, yeah, I'm super psyched to now move into what matters about this. We've talked a lot about it, but there's still so much more to cover about how it influenced religion, what's in there that people think is in the Bible but isn't, what it has done for language, what it has done for broader culture.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll be next episode, and I'm looking forward to it.
Did Paradise Lost you beguile?
Indeed.
Good.
Indeed it did. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. Thanks, Kayleigh, for telling me about Paradise Lost.
It's me falling from heaven.
We will be back soon, and in the meantime, we really appreciate you. And as always, if you can, this week, this month, this pay period, consider supporting a living author, because they could really use the help.
Hell yeah.
Bye.
Didn't Read It was created, written, and edited by me, Grace Todd. Kayleigh Hughes is our publicist and producer. You can follow the podcast on Twitter or Instagram at didn'treaditpod, or reach us via email at didn'treaditpod@gmail.com. For source notes and further reading, as well as a list of all existing episodes, please visit our website at didn'treaditpod.com. We are recorded in Richmond, Virginia, with special thanks to Black Iris Social Club and Pesca Trio Publishing. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a review or rating on your preferred podcasting platform, or just tell a friend. If you did not enjoy today's episode, we are currently accepting applications for a full-time nemesis. Our intro music is Books, written, performed, and recorded by William Albritton.